Bigfoot, alien abductions, the occult, the dead that still walk the earth, the many beasts that prowl the wildernesses and swim the deeps of the strange planet we call home. Join us for the next little while as we take another journey into the darkness, into the void from just beyond that line of trees, the nearby rooftops, beyond the crest of the vanishing point, and infinitely onward.
From the Prince Edward Guild Studios in Penetration, Michigan, it's Beyond the Near Horizon featuring Colonel Stephen Prather. Now here's your host, Colonel Stephen Prather.
Thank you, Stephanie. It is Sunday, May 16th. Welcome to the program. I'll apologize in advance for the quality of my vocal delivery. I just returned from a quick jaunt down to Ardmore, Oklahoma, where I joined Greg and Mindy Parch to install parapsychic fumigators at the old Mortimer Killefriend farmhouse. A piece of advice: don't set one of those off in a small space. I put one down in the downstairs john, and when it kicked off, it was like getting Frenched by a busted water main. It's been a day now, and everything smells like wet sage and mugwort, along with sounding like Suzanne Plachette. That said, weatherman and reporter Chip Stillwater is with us tonight to discuss an absolute epidemic of sinkholes around Stonepool, Kansas. Well, they've exhausted every traditional line of investigation and finally turned to the spirit world for answers. Good move. Our end-of-year prediction show last December with clairvoyant Audrey Partridge immediately came to mind, of course. She predicted, and I remind you, the year is not over yet, she predicted that Nebraska would sink uniformly 2,400 feet into the ground. Notable exception, of course, to Memorial Stadium, which Audrey expects will gently lift off and exit the atmosphere, sadly with the concession staff in tow. Our own Ranchera Yasmin has graciously visited the Nebraskan plains a few times this year to conduct measurements, between other commitments, and has found a 2-pound bag of nothing. So while we hate to see folks lose life and limb, we're eager to see if these sinkholes in Kansas hump it on up I-135 and get to work on the Cornhusker State. So, for the first time in a while, I took in the Stanley Cup Finals. Not a hockey fan, honestly, and the deal was our Sylvania console started pushing out tree sap again. So I jumped in the Chevette and lined up a stool down at Happy Marvin's to enjoy the game over a few cans of Falstaff. Spruce would normally be there, fast and furious with the questions, but she scraped her leg on the waistband of her slacks and needed to stay overnight with a couple of ambulance technicians down in Lansing. Rip and Augie, I think. Nice guys. They do a little bodybuilding on the side as well, and she gets free body massages out of the deal to boot. Always in a spectacular mood when she gets back, so that's a bonus. I'm not generally a fan of Philadelphia or Montreal, but as it happens, the Canadiens hoisted the cup earlier tonight. And I have to admit, the bartender kept the brew flowing, and I was high as a mafia-backed horse, completely spaced out until they got to the presentation ceremony. Odd thing is, without Spruce to interact with, I really watched this thing closely for the first time in a few years, and Buck Infidelis, who normally calls the Red Wings minor league, got down on the ice to introduce the commissioner and give away the cup. The team captain, Yvonne Cornenoyer, I can never pronounce it, is Yvonne, what's his name, lifted up Lord Stanley's cup. It struck me that this ritual is identical, regardless of who's wearing the muscle ointment, year to year. Hooping and yelling, champagne, dogpiling, the whole thing. But that part with the cup keeps coming back to me. It also occurred to me that calling that monstrous silver thermos, a cup, is totally off base. It's more of a giant ceremonial urn. And believe me, I know urns. I get a ceremonial Cuba urn from my insurance agent each Christmas with the Wolverine schedule on it. Frank has it in his head I'm from the Congo, and I can't present enough evidence to dissuade him. But I keep my pencils and paper clips in it, and it's a nice, respectful reminder that there are cultures out there in the world outside of our own. All the same, the common denominator with this ritual every year, and I have Bruce researching how long they've been doing this particular celebration, is that your hockey player is holding that sucker skyward. Is this really just a simple celebration, or has a lottery been drawn already, and that lucky or unlucky athlete is signaling to his extraterrestrial host-to-be that he's run the gauntlet? Selection process in plain sight. He's a prime specimen of human organism ready to be sacrificed. Now, that alone is enough for me to clear the puck, but there's more to this. I checked my notes from our last visit with Bong Jaffers from the Fayetteville Committee of Stellar Guidance and found what had been sticking in my head. Bong had mentioned an upcoming planetary ingress from Mars into Leo. And I wrote it down to give to my neighbor, Gwyneth, who was trying to get her roosters to turn the love light on their hens. But that wound up a mess. But would you care to guess what day that Martian ingress might be going down? Folks, Mars crosses into Leo today, 16th of May. And we're going to have Ranchera Yasmin on in a couple of weeks, but I got her on the horn earlier and confirmed that when Mars enters Leo, we're talking about extreme self-confidence and a double espresso sex drive. Alien interspecies procreation? It's a hotbed right there. It's different, you tell me. So let's triangulate these circles, if we may. Young, healthy specimens and these professional hockey players, sexed up like nobody's in charge, lifting this ceremonial urn. God knows whose charred tinder bits are inside. And what star system just happens to be sitting and waiting, brimming over with virulent energy from a planetary ingress? Well, that would be our old friend, the Regulus system. 4 things you have to remember about the Regularans. 1, the males look like Fred McMurray from My 3 Sons. 2, the women tend to wear scarves, even in the summer. And 3, they have a mission to create chaos and sow confusion on Earth. And of course, 4th and finally, all of this to use the people of Earth as hosts for their vacationing elites and sexual experimentation. You listen to the show, you know the score, but to remind, February 1877, Moon occults Regulus. By early March, you end up with the Compromise of 1877, which the Regularan ambassador authored in a Manassas brothel. And that sealed the end of Reconstruction in this country. Back in July 59, when Regulus was occulted by Venus, you have the Regularans effectively rubber stamping Castro down in Havana, not to mention my Aunt Gabby broke her toe in a fistfight with an Anglican down at the Old Londoner. Now, I'm not sure how much more proof anyone would need. I left a message with the Hockey League Commissioner's answering service with a pretty blunt promise to go public myself if we didn't hear back within the hour. And it's been 3 or 4 now, and my feeling is that they are entirely compromised. I sort of think, man, if they've infiltrated the Montreal Canadiens top to bottom and the league at large, who else do they have? You know, one of my neighbors, Mr. Chadwin, I think, has a Canadian ex-wife, and he takes the Montreal Gazette to scour the classifieds in the hopes of buying up his vintage sock garters, which he continues to sell without his permission. Now, he's been pretty ill lately and not particularly mobile, so I liberated a copy pretty easily. And it's Saturdays, naturally, but on page 46, there's an interview with Gordon Shepherd, Canadian filmmaker. And I had Bruce call Montreal Bureau of Tourism for some background on this guy. By the way, what a group of horses' asses. But that aside, this guy put a film out last year with Warner Brothers. Help me here, Bruce. It was Elevator Periscope, Eliza's Horoscope. No one I've heard of it in it. Tommy Lee Jones. I mean, these folks are going to be cleaning windshields for the rest of their natural lives. But my biggest takeaway, though, is that Shepard does the whole interview, director does the whole interview wearing a white papier-mâché mask. Cryptically, this is said to be because of the aforementioned film, but that's all it says. He knows, folks. This guy knows what's going on. And it appears the only reliable means of avoiding the Regularn influence in Canadian cinema is wearing the mask. And just look at classic Canadian cinema. Take a movie like Bush Pilot with Jack LaRue and Rochelle Hudson. Boy, what a looker she was. I don't know when it was made, late 40s, early 50s. They projected films in the summer on the outside wall of the Jefferson Penitentiary, which was right next to our place. And as a kid, I remember seeing this for the first time. Man, the raw energy and danger of relocating a piloting business to a new valley is already red-hot scripting. And then that's the pinnacle, my friends. You know, this poor sap Shepard would love to make a movie like Bush Pilot again if he could. But he's forced to work on a totally compromised level. Sickening to see interspecies exploitation of this kind take hold, especially with our friends up north. All I got to say is that we have to keep fighting, folks, no matter what the misguided or the compromised around us claim. I'm very excited to mention for this reason that we have what I think is the most convenient crossover coincidence we've ever had. Well, many of you will remember our March money drive to fund Miriam Hilbrook's groundbreaking UFO musical, They Came Here to Boogie. Now, that fell through in a truly unexpected fashion, and we'll continue to chat with Miriam from her cell up at Muskegon Correctional about the future of that project. But we still have about 600,000 embroidered They Came Here to Boogie papier-mâché masks. And these are off-white, but generally have the same fit as the one I saw in the Montreal Gazette article. I'm wearing one now, and plan to continue wearing it until we can be sure that Montreal is clear of this threat. And you can protect yourself and your family and score a 2-pack of these masks via the show at a near wholesale price of $3.25 or at $3 Canadian. Send that to Beyond the Near Horizon Regularn Influence Protection Mask, care of the Organism Consortium, P.O. Box 45000, 45,000 South Memphis, Tennessee 38106. All right, birthdays, letters, and Chip Stillwater all coming up. Recently, my wife, Spruce, was dropping me off for work as she needed the car for some volunteer work she's doing at the Flint Auxiliary Naval Academy to take inseams and other measurements for the servicemen there. Being perpetually busy, she dropped me off at the wrong location, which happens frequently. I later found out I had been dropped in the Hiawatha National Forest or thereabouts. This place can be pretty wild, lots of wildlife, and you won't find a delicatessen around the corner when hunger comes calling. Well, fortunately, unbeknownst to me, Spruce had sewn raw meat into the clothing I was wearing, so I was able to subsist long enough to hitch with some Lutheran reenactors to a Harvey's Haven next to the Smelting Museum. From there, I was able to barter my polyester slacks and the remainder of that raw strip steak for a quick ride home. But for my wife's proactiveness, it could have turned out very different. I was disqualified from the Boy Scouts for manufacturing and distributing clove cigarettes when I was young, which I still maintain is not criminal. But the net effect is I was cheated of key survival training. Well, there's no reason for me or any of you to be unprepared again, because the Woodsman's Almanac is here to succinctly fill those information gaps for us in the 2,600 pages of their easy-to-follow guide. Just like you can trust the woodsman to be friendly and ready to offer knowledge, Expect the same from the guide that bears his name. And this is a treasure trove, too. On page 11, you'll learn how to keep a roaring fire burning on a wooden vessel, even in rough seas. On page 1389, you'll see instructions on creating a collapsible shelter with sharpened kill spikes and how to avoid tripping the crisscrossing fishing line triggers in your sleep. Page 2002 contains instructions for a makeshift Africanized bee honey well. Sounds pretty tasty. So if you need to fashion a raincoat from the panther that just tried to kill you, or a money-saving makeshift casket for a friend's burial, you can trust the wisdom compiled over 7 long years of publication. When you order your very own Woodsman's Guide, you'll see firsthand why traffic fatalities in the Providence area alone have only increased 13% in the last year. Folks, grab your pen and write 4 checks of just $37.95 to the Woodsman's Almanac, care of International Import Corporation Limited, 99 Olympic Trials Lane, Free Fall, Montana, 59083. As the introduction of this wonderful book says, it's now less likely that you'll die. I want to thank Agnes Murto from Ditchland, South Dakota, who had been sending boxes of throat lozenges about every week since we had the homeopath Effie Carter on, God rest her soul. But to be honest, we had these things stacking up in the latrine, and after the minor flooding we had there a few weeks back, I was going to donate them to the rec center. God knows those people could use it. Real glad I held on to them. They do seem to cause hallucinations. I've got a lobster with wings flittering right in front of me here, and when I wave at it, a second winged lobster appears. Hey there, little fellow. All the same, does help the throat. All right, I may be death warmed over, but it won't stop our birthdays. Let's see what we've got here. Actor James Mason is 67 today. I just saw him in an Italian flick, The Left Hand of the Law. Can't pronounce the original Italian title. I don't think I've ever been that confused in one sitting. And I come to find out that the folks that did the subtitling didn't even speak Italian and accidentally transposed the translation for Last Tango in Paris onto that thing. It is a relief to know that the cop was just looking to kill the assassins. Let's see what's next. I don't know who this guy is. Bruce, who is Joseph Cotton? With who? Soylent Green. Oh, well, Soylent Green was a documentary. Really? Oh, that's a load off. Well, good news if you know Joseph Cotton, folks. He wasn't bludgeoned to death, and he's 71. Gotta be a relief for the family. Trini Lopez turns 39. Singer, right? That Hammer song is pretty angry, I think. Seemed pretty obsessed with banging away at things. Not productive for solving problems, if you ask me. I mean, I'm not saying he's a psychopath, but it's not a great start. Happy birthday, Trini, and I hope you're getting some quiet time. Well, normally, about now, I would launch into our listener and guest birthdays, but my great-aunt Adelia was up here dropping off her laundry, and she chain smokes, I may have mentioned, and has an inconvenient habit of lighting whatever's next to her on hand for cigarettes. And sadly, today's listener list was torched to light one of her Luckies. So my apologies to anyone who's listening that might have been born today. As it happens, we also lost the letters we planned to read through today as well. So doubly sorry for that. But we'll take the opportunity here to go through a fresh batch. And first one we've got here is from Maggie Morris, right down the road in Meandering Falls, She writes to us, Dear Colonel Prather, I drove my son Barty up to visit the Morning Tryst Dairy in Millettville last weekend and was saddened to find that it had been burned to the ground. I planned the visit after hearing you mention this was a favorite getaway spot for your family. With some time on our hands, I drove Barty and I over to the Lost Terrace Cafe down 141, a mile or two. The breakfast buffet was shellfish and cigars, so we opted for the tomato mushroom grits, which tasted a lot better than it looked. She continues, we were paying the bill when we saw two police officers walk past and down to a table with a woman with a beehive answering to Adelia's stepchild. I thought there was no way there are two Adelia stepchilds living in Millettville. Charlene, this has to be your aunt. There was a small scuffle, but the officers marched her out right past us, and we're talking about Morning Tryst Dairy. Now, I tried calling her station from the payphone, but understand it operates as a tanning salon in daytime hours. In desperation, I felt I needed at least to write you to let you know I think your aunt is being framed for arson. Love and wellness to your family, Maggie, Bart, and this week, Guillermo. Oh, thank you for a very considerate letter, Maggie. Of course, to remind, she's my great aunt. Adelia has always been a free spirit. Mostly, I feel that she's one of those folks that doesn't fit into a particular mold in this world. And she's always loved pyrotechnics. Every time Spruce and I visit her, we know we're going to be eating something flambe. And she has worked every job you can imagine, which I think gets folks in small towns talking. She had a real opportunity before I was born, from what I understand, at the Port Beulah School of Pyrotechnics. Sadly, the place burned down the week she arrived. And we are aware of the situation as you related. But as I mentioned, she's been over to visit, so I can tell you she's well. And that rumor mill has always included the police, who are convinced she's a firebug. Fair to say she would have gone to trial for the Morning Tryst Dairy thing if the Millettville courthouse hadn't burned down. I don't know where things are headed, but we're happy to have her out while they repair some recent fire damage at Millettville Detention. Thanks for your concern and for the note. All right, and we have next here Noah Prue from Truth Teller, west of Ann Arbor, I think. Noah writes, Dear Colonel, I've been particularly haunted by the March 3rd show with minor league pitcher Paul Jace, which I managed to record on my reel-to-reel. I drove down to Brest Bay to the spot Paul talked about on the show, and right around dusk, over several nights, I'm not looking to take a ride like he did, which sounded pretty terrifying, and I'm actually pretty afraid of heights. But I do want to help get these things out of our community before someone else gets one of their sadistic intergalactic joy rides. My girlfriend has had enough, which I can understand, but this sacrifice is small, knowing the Aquarians are lurking right there offshore. I just don't understand why everyone isn't out there every night, or the military for that matter. After a night or two, he says, I listened back to the tape and realized that Paul had specifically mentioned looking at North Bass Island and a light coming up over that farmhouse. Sure enough, only 33 days in, you wouldn't believe it, but a glowing light rose up in the direction of North Bass. For once, this seemed to get some attention, and I saw police boats and all sorts of traffic moving around the coast or cross water to intervene. All right, he finishes up here. Sadly, I was ushered off the shoreline by the cops before daybreak. By the time I swung into a Shays Gas and Liquor about 5 or 6 miles inland, they were already talking about a cover story in there about the horse barn catching a spark and starting the blaze. I think the only way we're going to defeat the Aquarians is to keep getting the truth out on the airwaves at every opportunity. By the way, I had the pleasure to meet your Aunt Adelia at the same Shays, and she is really a lovely woman. Keep fighting for the justice and unvarnished truth. Noah. Well, thank you, Noah. We've talked about the Aquarians a lot more this year, happy to say, but I think we've got at least 4 different visiting civilizations in Lake Erie alone. I think it's pretty brave for you to get out there and stare at that lake. And in general, we need a lot more folks staring at all the lakes It's time to get serious about this stuff. Appreciate it, and good luck, my friend. We'll keep shining the spotlight from here. All right, and last on tap here, this is noteworthy. Our first letter from Wisconsin. Dan Steele from Matterhorn Terror, Wisconsin, begins, Dear Commodore Prather, I'm an extruded foods engineer for the Matterhorn Terror School District and had the chance to listen to your show for the first time when I was working late testing a new corn shaping spigot. You were interviewing Dr. Earl Winston from Ruthless Hills Votech, and I'm writing this letter because I don't think I've ever heard something that has made me angrier than a so-called educator that wants to make a quick buck teaching people to fake crop circles, forest wraiths, and the like. To that end, I am publicly challenging Dr. Winston to a wrestling match. I recognize that he is some 40 years my senior, and some might view this as unfair. To level this out, I will grapple with him without a jockstrap. I don't come to this decision lightly, and I want to be truthful and admit that I very nearly resorted to extra legal means to rid the world of this stain of a human being. Right, he continues, I saw a side of this world in bar backrooms and clandestine shooting ranges that few see. The only nicety was bumping into your wife's spruce. I didn't realize poison control even had a donation center, but it sounds like a pretty fascinating career. As I write to you, I am in a cell at Matterhorn Terror Correctional, where I am being held over for intent to solicit bodily harm to another individual. The judge also comes from an extruded food background and has agreed to allowing me to leave to wrestle Dr. Winston should an agreement be struck. I need you to be the broker for that and allow me to defend the untold witnesses to alien footprints in our world. It is not a matter for fakery or mockery. Sincerely looking for your assistance, Dan Oiled Cougar Steele. Well, thank you, Dan. I get it. I mean, we have a lot of folks on this program that challenge our assumptions about the world. I also happen to disagree with Dr. Winston on some things, but the point is to let him have his say, and America is audacious for its entrepreneurs. But based on some of the wallet photos Earl and I looked at, I think he would have loved this wrestling idea. Unfortunately, he passed away in April, so I'll reach out to his estate and see if we can interest Mrs. Winston, and we'll be in touch on that. Appreciate the letter. Just a short break, and we come back, folks, with Weatherman Chip Stillwater. Do come back. Do you find yourself scraping together coins every 2 weeks? Well, when's the last time you got a raise? The cost of living doesn't look like it's going downward anytime soon. And if you listen to this show, you know the blood bank is a mainstay for me. But what if you're squeamish or running short on living relatives? A second income can help, but I recognize the counseling work my wife Spruce does at a slew of local gyms, most of whom pay in rare gems, as the exception among the rules. Now, of course, the lottery is an option, but we need daily opportunities for money-making that can help keep a roof over us and the pantry from gathering dust. Well, I hardly believed it when I heard it, but the consulate of the Kingdom of Sweden is here to help. If you keep up with current events, and we tend to on this program, you'll know that Sweden elected a new prime minister, Thorbjorn Fälldin, I think. That's a mouthful. Back in April. Now, this Fjord floorboard guy is very business-focused, and he's teamed up with a friend of this show, Benny Signals. Now, we know Benny is always on the lookout for deals, and boy, do we have a winner here. Benny knows, like most of us do, that the most exciting way of making money outside of stealing is gambling. Now, you may say that gambling is not legal here in the great state of Michigan, and you'd be right, unless you consider the sacred domain of sovereign embassy territory, my friends. That's why I'm excited to announce what I think will be a great helping hand to our community. Well, that would be Gambler World, the Kingdom of Sweden's family embassy and betting complex. This sprawling location right off of Exit 3 on the completed portion of the Diana Ross Turnpike is a literal oasis, ready to help you relieve stress and supplement your income. Now, Prime Minister Tortbird and his administration are sitting down a little piece of stylish Europe right in our backyard. And yes, the Kingdom of Sweden understands times are tough. They've worked with Benny Signals, LLC, to offer some great stay options for your next getaway. With the Climber package, for instance, stay in a tent right off the turnpike and rough it just like a real Swedish mountaineer. Gaming representatives set up shop in what amounts to a new medieval village, offering games of chance that harken back to a fresh and carefree existence. And your kids are sure to enjoy making clothing out of dried mud. Next, the Liftoff package takes you to even greater heights. Live the authentic Swedish spa lifestyle as you enjoy accommodations in a working spa. Drop in at any of the 7 handball courts that adjoin to place your bets while your children learn the discipline that only working in a commercial laundry facility avails. And if you have an hour or two, drive up to either of the freestanding indoor skeet shooting domes. Win, place, and parlay as world-class sharpshooters down a variety of colorful skeets high above the food court to the delight of patrons below enjoying carnival staples. Well, that's just the beginning of what you can find at Gambler World. But you'll need to visit yourself to find out about the Orangutan Tower Hotel or the Richard Connell Memorial Jungle Escape. Folks, get yourself the money you need for eggs or bread, but don't forget to have some fun, courtesy of Benny Signals and the Kingdom of Sweden. Take a chance, drop by, and roll the dice on Gambler World today. Exit 3 on the new Diana Ross.
You said, yes, that's true, but we've come here for you.
I love this freaking
Come
song.
to take you up at our silver ship.
Pretty darn haunting.
I agree, and we find yes, storytelling right. Ended up far away in Star Sector 5.
Just like Elvira Larson.
The first mate he shoved a tube up in me. I cried, what just happened to liberty? They said liberty, liberty. Then they knocked me down and they all went to town.
Played this on First Date with Spruce.
The dark day, the cosmos ran through me.
Man,
I can see clear through walls and I still agree.
love that song. Well, I meant to mention earlier, for a second time, that our good friend Bruce will be departing from the boards beginning in June, and we will be welcoming Vladdy to the control booth. Bruce tends to be a little paranoid and predicts something is bound to go wrong. All I have to say is keep the faith. The two things I can be sure of, Vladdy will be on the boards come June, and Jerry Ford is going to win pretty easy in November. All right. Well, our next guest has reported the weather and major events for WVBV-TV in Stone Pool, Kansas for the last 11 years. He cut his teeth during a July 1965 broadcast from the Stone Pool Fairgrounds, where he dove over a concession table and successfully prevented a patron from eating a tainted pretzel. Although the fairgoer was paralyzed from the waist down by his actions, the name Chip Stillwater soon began its long reign as a recognizable voice in the volatile boiler room that is Western Kansas news reporting. Now, lately, he's begun to incorporate tarot and various other readings into his forecast. The first weatherman known to have done this, by the way. He was tried and acquitted for a contradictory tarot reading that suggested that outdoor spiritual events would be advisable. The Probar Martinez family, along with 3 others, caught in the ensuing flash flood, still picket Chip's remote broadcast to this day. Nonetheless, joining us from the Higher Plane Hotline, Chip Stillwater. Chip, thanks for dropping by.
Oh, heck yeah. Happy to be here.
You've had a very interesting few months out there in Stonepool.
Oh, yeah. It's been a pickle out here. We've got winds today. We're at west-northwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour right now.
Oh, right. Well, it gets windy out there on the plains fairly regularly, am I right?
Most definitely. A little concerning to see that kind of airflow indoors. But, yeah,
Right.
we do. It does get windy.
I bet. Well, speaking of Stonepool, we picked something up on the AP not too long back on a big archaeological find. There were, I guess the concrete from the old highway was being busted up to make likenesses of the Croft superstars. And the stuff they found on this dig, boy, wagon pieces, cookery, all this stuff about 140 years old, if I remember correctly. Now, I understand you're also the town historian, so you've been following this pretty closely, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah. It's been quite an eye-opener. They found a whole slew of artifacts from the 1822 North-South Plains Migration Party, along with an administrative building the townsfolk tried to bury for some reason. I guess they succeeded.
We've thought of covering the 1822 Migration Party on the show. Pretty darn mysterious. I guess this was a large group headed down to what was Mexico at the time, and all 80 of them or so just disappeared.
Yeah, 82 if you count the preacher and his brother. Yeah.
So have you found out what kind of interaction folks there in Stonepool had with the Migration Party?
We killed all 82 of them.
Oh, well, that's too bad. Any particular reason?
Yeah, we're kind of still trying to figure that out. They were Anglo, so we don't think it was on account of how they looked.
All right. Maybe they were salesmen. I mean, sometimes you can snap with these folks, but every community has its outliers. I mean, any evidence the folks that did this were identified and brought to justice?
Sure. Well, a lot of folks got involved. The mayor, the sheriff, justice of the peace, headmistress at the school.
Okay. All right. Well, that's encouraging. Did they determine who the perpetrators were?
Well, like I mentioned, it was the mayor, the sheriff, justice of the peace, the headmistress at the school.
Gotcha. Well, man, that is weird, off the charts weird. Maybe it was something in the air conditioning vents. I mean, the fellow who owned the old Char Chicken Experience across Edward Gilt Boulevard here got fumes in there a couple of years back, and man, he just lost it.
Okay. Yeah, well, I don't think they had air conditioning at that time.
Right. Well, that's a good point. It does take a while to get that stuff installed. Now, your current mayor is a little bit of a celebrity in his own right, I hear, a former astronaut.
Yeah, he's been in space. Neat guy.
Okay. Moper, what's his name?
Well, Vic Markey. His name is Vic Markey.
Vic Markey, yeah. We're super curious to talk to him about Apollo 10. And I'm still on the fence.
Sure.
But a lot of our listeners believe he filmed that in Burbank.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'd love to, but he's been real busy this week, so we're going to have a little trouble landing him.
All right. So no chance of a quick interview? Just a couple of minutes?
No, he's on an out-of-town trip with a couple of folks in Topeka.
Oh, yeah, wow. But, my wife, Spruce, studied human projectile sciences at Emporia State. Most of her massage support group still lives in the area. Where's he staying in Topeka?
Hidden Miracles at truck stop off of 335 up there.
Well, that must be some truck stop.
Yeah, he's making it work. He sort of took a couple of folks hostage.
Oh, okay. Well, I see. Well, if you can get that sorted out, we'd love to chat with him about Burbank, Apollo 10.
Okay.
Beyond that, also, lots of questions on the Skylab, which I understand is being hauled on a flatbed in a continuous circle around Farragut State Park out in Idaho.
Didn't know that.
Sorry. Excuse me for a second. I got to grab a drink of water.
Doing okay there?
Yeah, we'll take a little break here. When we come back, we're going to get to the bottom, hopefully, of the preternatural forces literally trying to tear apart a little town of Stone Pool, Kansas. More next, folks. Stay tuned. Well, I hope I can keep in good voice for this next message, folks, because I'm super excited about it. I don't know about you, but I wake up with what I call mushy head on a very frequent basis. I do keep odd hours, but I try to watch my waistline and spend 3 hours a week in my vinyl stretching ball. I remain energetic, but mentally sharp, not always. And when I picked up the copy for this spot, I honestly believed it was for Kit Carson canned flounder. As I read this to you, on one level, I know that isn't true, but with the diminished capacity that this mushy-headedness brings, not to mention my cold, there's a part of me that senses the presence of fish, no matter what direction I look in. Well, we know the name Dr. Winter McKenna quite well on this show. She's chairwoman of the International Brain Capacity Initiative, and in keeping with her impressive resume, every time we have her on the show, I feel like we've flipped another switch on the dashboard that optimizes our minds and prepares us for success. Well, she reached out to us recently with a product that is going to touch us all in the most tender spot. You see, Dr. McKenna also happens to be an expert bowler, and she waxes her ball about every 10 games. Now, this ball waxing helps guide every shot into the right spot and often result in that satisfying explosion of a strike. Folks, what if we had a wax for our minds that would help us carve those sharp corners on every day's lane? Well, the good doctor has some great news. It's a product that will have you working calculus in your underwear. That's McKenna Brain Paste. Easy to apply. Just grab a few handfuls and mold around your upper neck and ears. Add a swath across your forehead and allow 14 minutes for the compound to dry. If you're fashion conscious, add a drop or two of the provided coloring agent to dial in your unique complexion. I've always fancied having a more pronounced brow, and McKenna Brain Paste lets me mold things until it's just right. Even before your 14 minutes are up, you're going to start feeling a warming sensation. That's the blend of herbs, custom distilled Tennessee whiskey, and dopamine crystals working to set off a nuclear reaction of sorts in your mind, sending it charging with sparkling intelligence and creativity. You'll find it's you that answers the trivia questions first at your next party, and you that impresses the boss with a new plan for your wastewater conundrum. Here's the best part. The longer you wear it, the smarter you stay. Pretty darn simple. Pick up a 42-gallon barrel at any Loaded Rifle Sports location in the Upper Peninsula. And here's the best part. You'll pay just $1.25 for it. You heard me right. 42 gallons of goodness for $1.25. Not only that, but you get a thank you certificate from the Michigan Environmental Commission for assisting with toxic material disposal. Put your thinking cap down and mold a new, better-fitting one. It's McKenna Brain Paste. Check it out. All right, folks. Back here with Chip Stillwater.
Your voice is sounding a little rough there, friend.
Well, I gotta admit, a lustful affair of sorts with egg salad sandwiches, which are kind of my chicken soup, but they really set off my laryngitis. I tried to limit myself to 4 today for that reason.
Sure.
So, Chip, let's talk about these sinkholes. I understand parts of your old downtown and your town hall were impacted.
Yeah, there was some damage. It definitely clipped the town hall, that's for sure.
Right. Well, looking here at the Stonepool Servant article in front of me, which side of the hole is the town hall on?
Well, it's sort of more in the hole.
Okay, all right. And on the far side neighborhood was swallowed up, I understand.
Yeah, a large side. The good news is that the damage to most of the homes is modest, and we'll be able to rebuild the vast majority of those.
Well, that's pretty darn good news. I mean, those folks don't have to lose their homes.
Yeah, the residents themselves were actually all crushed to death, but if they got cousins or nephews out of state and they're in the will, that might pan out for them.
All right, well, that's a upside. Any mining in the area that might be responsible for the collapse? You got some mines in the area, right?
Yeah. Well, we mine a little gypsum and salt, clay, and the like, but we ruled those out.
Well, yeah. So, guess that clears the 3 or 4 in that general area. Sounds like pretty due diligence.
Yeah, getting no more than 300 or 400 in the vicinity, and we feel like we've ruled them out.
Yeah, that sounds logical. Well, just to put this out there, Chip, I mean, do you think this is the devil down in that hole?
Well, you think you might want to take another lozenge?
Well, I've got 3 of those suckers in right now. More to the point, I mean, do you believe in the devil, Chip?
Yeah, I believe in God, and I believe in the devil.
Do you think he's down in that hole?
Yeah, he might be. Maybe one of his friends.
One of his friends? You mean like a demon? Have you ever met a demon, Chip?
I don't think so.
You've got a lot of them there in Kansas, though. Church of the Damned, up in Topeka. The Hamburger Man.
The Hamburger Man?
Hamburger Man of Hutchinson. Did you folks find any mutilated bodies in the area? Just thinking out loud here. You know, Stoll Cemetery is already an established gateway to hell. Maybe you're in a kind of demonic franchise.
You know, I'm just gonna come right out and say it. I have a small cocaine habit. I think that might just be catching up with me.
Give me a second here. Good Raymond Burr, that was in there. Chip, can you hear us okay there? Chip? Oh. I was going to mention, I think there's a good chance you have the albino woman out there. And she started out pretty harmless, and maybe it's women's lib, but you got folks out there reporting physical attacks, so be on the lookout for Consuelo, or whatever her name is. Well, sure do thank Chip, wherever you may be now, for joining us tonight. And wish him luck out there in Stonepool. Pretty fascinating stuff. It occurs to me that we may have a few demons dueling it out over this little plot in western Kansas. I can't think of better timing, actually, for tomorrow night's guest. Myrtle Ellis will be joining us. She's going to be talking to us about her new book, La Fantasma Nostra, Unmasking Organized Hauntings. Turns out ghosts are starting to pick up some habits from organized crime. So we'll get her take on these unlucky folks in Stonepool. Does make you wish you could do more for them, but sometimes that's just not in the runes. I do want to thank, though, before we set off here, Bruce and Stephanie. And to my lovely wife, Spruce. I look forward to our flying lessons next week. I'm wearing a blindfold is a little bit on the edge for me, but I trust your judgment, and I know you'll be at the airfield watching me the whole time. I hope all of you out there have someone or maybe something watching over you until we meet again. And until then, do not allow the ordinary distractions to thwart your search for wisdom and knowledge. All that and more may just be revealed beyond the near horizon. Good night.